Last night me get some punani, right now more punani. Last night me get some punani, right now more punani. Last night me get some punani, right now more punani. Last night me get some punani.
Cause each and every night I must get some banana. Take her girl on the beach and create a sanana. Drunk in the dance, not tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la. My room was where I sent Elizabeth. I love to see the girls in their sexy bikini. Wanna take my chili and push it between. When I say betweeny, I'm not talking beanie. I'm talking the girls with the fat poonie. In the grill, I took her girl to Tambu. That's where I cocked her up and gave her my bamboo. She said, Dr. Evil, can you be my boo-boo? I told her, no, I'm not Usher, fuck you. Last night I had a crazy threesome.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Threesome Show with the unlicensed sex doctor, Teflon Don. Let me say that again, just to make sure everybody's clear. I am not a sex doctor. I am an unlicensed sex doctor. Basically, I just like to talk about sex. Tonight, we are going to have a more educational show than usual. We're going to be talking about sex addiction. Being addicted to sex. It's a lot bigger issue than most people know. It is a really huge issue. And I know that I usually cut up and I talk a lot of trash on the show, and I act foolish. And I just want to let y'all know that tonight will be absolutely no different. I'm still going to be an asshole. Like, I'm still going to talk shit, and I'm still going to be talking about foolishness, but I'm going to educate you at the same time. Later in the show, I'm also going to talk about something that I did not know existed until I started doing the research for this show. It's relationship and love addiction. So, I would like to jump right into it. However, I did have someone hit me up and it asked a crazy question. So I figured I'll go ahead and answer him right now on the show. So last week I talked about, the 5 sex languages, and they were asking me, how does one kind of feel out exactly what their mate's sexual language is? And I wanted to bring it on just in case anyone else had that same question. So here's the thing. If you don't know what your mate's sex language is, there's 2 ways of figuring it out. One, you can ask them if they themselves know what their sex language is. That's the easiest way. So for those who don't like to communicate, ask. But if you don't know, then what you may want to do is just kind of pull up my previous show, listen to the 5 sex languages, and see how your mate matches up to that. See how they match up to the 5 sex languages. That's the most I can give y'all on the recap. If you want more of a recap, please check last week's show. But let's go ahead and jump into sex addiction. So we'll kind of glaze over it a little bit, then we'll get a little deeper as it goes in. So what is a sex addict? Let's start at the bare minimum. So a sex addict or sex addiction is defined as a lack of control over sexual thoughts, urges, and impulses. While sexual impulses are natural, sex addiction only refers to behaviors that are done in excess of significantly impacting one's life and in a negative way. Once again, New York City school system. So let me break that down a little bit for you. So everybody in their natural being, likes sex. But when you're a sex addict, it basically consumes your every waking moment. It consumes your thoughts. It consumes your impulses. It consumes how you behave, how you act. and how you act towards sex. So it's a little deeper than, oh, I like to have sex. Most people like to have sex. That doesn't make you a sex addict. So if you're right now automatically thinking, oh my God, he's talking about me because I like to have sex, calm down. It's not you. Don't start standing up in the meetings yet. Everybody likes to have sex. A sex addict, they like to have sex a lot more than most. They actually like to not only think about sex, think about the act of sex. That's their main focal point of any given day, and every thought is sex. All right, so although sex addiction isn't listed as a diagnosable condition. Oh, hold on. Hey, Amanda, how you doing? Thank you so much for joining. So although sex addiction isn't listed as a diagnosable condition, research indicates that excess sexual behavior can develop like a chemical addiction. So the same way, you got a crackhead, and same way you got a dope fiend, you got a sex head or a sex fiend. A person with a sex addiction may have a compulsive need to be sexually stimulated all the time. So that takes it a little bit further. So for everybody who thought I might be a sex addict, so if you're sitting at work and you can't work because you're so consumed by sex and you got to get up or and go to the bathroom and relieve yourself, or you're sitting at your desk with your hands in your pocket and you're stimulating yourself, then you might have a problem. That's might have a problem. This desire often interferes with their ability to live their daily life. Oh, here we go. Yeah, shit is real out here. Yeah, it's really real. Sexual addiction can come in many different forms, including addiction to sexual acts, prostitution, watching or consuming pornography, masturbation or sexual fantasy, exhibition, or voyeurism. I laughed at that last one because I'm about to reach out to somebody real quick. You're probably a sex addict if you intentionally leave your windows shades open when you disrobe on an off chance that someone might see you. You might have a sexual problem if you find yourself masturbating multiple times throughout the day, or if you just are sitting and have, like most people have regular daydreams. If you're having sexual daydreams all day, you might be a sex addict. If you watch pornography multiple times throughout the day, you might be a sex addict. If you watch pornography for something more than just relieving yourself, like if you're basically watching it like it's a freaking movie, you might be a sex addict. Frequenting, prostitution or prostitutes, you might be a sex addict. And that just doesn't go for men. There are women who seek out male prostitutes. There are parts of the LGBTQ community that will seek out prostitutes. So this is not exclusive to men. I know everybody likes to think, oh, thank you very much. If you're a sex addict, a lot of people might think if you're a sex addict, you must be a guy. No. There's women sex addicts. There's members of the LGBTQ community that are sex addict. So it's not exclusive to men. I know men become the focal point for this, but it's not just for us. It's for everybody, the whole gambit. Um, sex addicts may alter their activities to perform sexual acts persistently, unable to control their behavior despite any consequences. So, that person for my New Yorkers that sits on the train and will just expose themselves and start masturbating, chances are they're a sex addict. And I've actually seen, because I'm from New York and I used to ride the train. Homeless people who would do that. Well, chances are their sex addiction may have contributed to their homelessness, because they weren't able to behave in society the way the normal person would. So we're going to start to dive right in. I think I spent enough time on the preliminary. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. No pun intended. Signs of a sex addict. Sexual addiction can manifest itself in many different ways, both physical and emotional. It takes a healthcare professional to make a clear diagnosis, but here are some signs that can point to a potential sex addiction. So I'm going to go through those signs. And some of you all, okay, so first of all, let me put this as a factor of point. First of all, I got this information. I did my research mostly on WebMD. If anyone does not know what WebMD is, I'm not about to give them advertisement. However, WebMD will have you thinking that you're about to die when you just got freaking the sniffles. WebMD will expound on a lot of things and make you think that you're pretty much the worst person on the planet, or you pretty much have the worst disease known to man. I wanted to make that caveat because I did get most of this information from WebMD. And some of you are going to be sitting there listening to this going, oh my God, I'm a sex addict and I'm going to quit my job to just basically focus on sex. It's probably not going to happen. Relax. You probably just think about sex like the normal person would. But let's jump right into it. Someone who has obsessive sexual thoughts. If you obsess over sex quite frequently, if it's not daily, or well, if it's not hourly, then it's daily, like that's your focus of the day. You're not focused on making money. You're not focused on being a productive member of society. The only thing that you think about is sex. Now, as a caveat, sex can be productive in society. You may produce a lot of damn kids. But if you obsess over sex all day, put a pin in that one. That means you might be on the path. Spending excessive time on sex. Now, when I first read that, I was thinking, well, when I have sex, I like to take my time on it. That's not what it's talking about. While seeking out a sexual partner, it's necessary. It isn't necessarily, a sign of sexual addiction. If someone is spending excessive amounts of time and energy on sex, it might be a red flag. So because I messed that up, let me run back through that real quick. While seeking a sexual partner isn't necessarily a sign of sexual addiction. Hey, if someone is spending excessive amounts of time and energy on sex, it might be a red flag. This can include spending time attempting to acquire sex, having sex, being sexual, or recovering from sexual experiences. Those might be some red flags for you. So if you got those two, then you might start looking for a doctor that's going to talk to you about some sex addiction. Want to make sure I keep my head on time because my producer gets on me because I'll run over. Feelings of shame or depression. If a need for sex crosses over a sex addict's mind, someone's sexual feelings might also become crossed with feelings of anxiety, shame, depression, or regret. The individual may feel shame about their sexual urges and their difficulty controlling those sexual urges. So let me don that up for you real quick. So just feeling depressed or feeling shame doesn't make you a sex addict. But if you engage in sexual activities and then you sit back and start to contemplate how shameful your behavior was, or if it sends you into deep depression, those are definitely signs of someone who has a sex addiction. They may even show signs of clinical depression or suicidal tendencies. If you have sex and you start to think about suicide, check yourself into a clinic, because you might possibly, almost definitely, have a sex addiction problem. Because let me tell you, sex is supposed to stimulate a part of your mind that makes you joyful. I actually knew what that part of the mind was, but I can't think of it offhand right now. But it's supposed to basically make you the same as any other drug would. Like, it's supposed to stimulate you that way. Now, if you are stimulated, but you take the opposite plunge, if it plunges you into depression, then you probably are a sex addict and you have a sex addiction problem, and you should really seek help. 28% of sex addicts have shown signs of depression, more than the normal 12% of the general population. So if you're a part of that 28% that are basically having sex and then you're becoming depressed, or you feel shameful, you feel almost dirty because you had sex, then you need to take heed to what's going on this show. Excluding other activities. If you start to separate yourself from other activities because your main focal point is just sex, then you're possibly a sex addict, and you also may need to seek help. A sex addict may fixate on sex to the point where they have difficulties engaging in their normal activities throughout the day. For example, work, school, dealing with your children, dealing with their spouses. Then you may have a sexual addiction, especially if you become socially withdrawn. That's someone with a sex problem. And I never thought of sex being a problem. I always thought of sex as being a solution. But then I had to think about that. There's a lot of crackheads, there's a lot of weed heads, there's a lot of dope fiends that think of their drug as being the solution to their problem as well. So if you're masturbating excessively, everybody masturbates. It's a fact of life. It's just what everybody does. Anybody who does not masturbate is either A, lying, or B, need to spend some more time with themselves to get to know who they really are. But if you're masturbating excessively multiple times throughout the day, you can't resist masturbation. You're taking breaks at work just for the express need to masturbate. That's excessive masturbation. When masturbation becomes uncontrollable, then that's a problem, and you're possibly a sex addict. Engaging in risky or inappropriate behavior. Engaging in risky or inappropriate behavior. That's kind of circling back to someone who really chased down the prostitutes, who seeks out prostitution because it's easier for them to pay for it than to try to find someone to have a normal relationship for, and sex might be a byproduct of that normal relationship. For them, you're basically just only needing to seek out sex, and you seek out prostitutes for that reason. Now, if you just, if for one, I mean, I say just, but if you seek out a prostitute, that doesn't make you a sex addict. There are many people who will utilize prostitution because they don't want to be bothered with the relationship aspect of sex. They just want to go in, get their nut, and be done. That doesn't make you a sex addict. Makes you kind of weird though, but doesn't make you a sex addict. It just makes you someone who would much rather just, spend the money, be done with it. I got what I needed off. I didn't have to take you to dinner, have long conversations. But if that's something that you seek out on a regular basis, if that becomes something that you would much rather do, because the only reason that you want to interact with the opposite and or same sex is just for sexual gratification, then that becomes an issue. That's definitely a problem. I know I ran through a lot of that really quickly, and that's cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a really quick recap on the signs of being a sex addict. So for those who are taking notes, here you go. Obsessive sexual thoughts, spending excessive times on sex, feeling shame or depression after or prior to sex, excluding other activities for the sake of having sex, masturbating excessively, engaging in risky or inappropriate behaviors for sex. I want to add something onto that last one. So just chasing down prostitutes is not the only thing that's risky or inappropriate behavior. If you find yourself focusing on women in the sense of, women, men, or the same sex, in a way where you feel like you might get to the point of taking sex against their will, that's definitely a sexual problem. Rape is usually contributed to control. But if you look at someone as someone you might want to take sex from against their will, and it's not a control thing, it's more of a sexual gratification thing, then you definitely may have, not even may, you definitely have a problem. I mean, I've looked at women and I've said, you know what, I'd like to have sex with her. It sounds like a really good idea for the day. And I might, proposition them in a respectable way. How are you doing? Would you like to have relations? That doesn't make you a sex addict. But if you look at someone and you think, I might actually take the sex against their will, that's a problem. That's a definite problem. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna go ahead and jump off into this week's mix. I'll be back on the other side of the mix, and I'm going to talk about people with relationship addiction and love addiction issues. I don't normally talk about relationships and love, but let's jump into the mix, and I'll meet you on the other side of that. This is the Threesome Show with the Unlicensed Sex Doctor. Stay tuned.
Yo, Em, you did it again.
Your body language tell me that you mean business. One track, work it out, we doing fitness. I want it all day, Monday to Sunday. You got my heart racing now. Baby, when you come round, I make it bounce.
Make it bounce, yeah, yeah. Make it bounce, make it bounce, yeah, yeah.
Bounce, make it bounce, make it bounce, make it bounce. Yeah, baby, where you there? Them girl never there. Boy, I got that fire, that is hot pepper. Sipping on Henny, we be going so far on the city. When I got you with me, when I got you with me. Who got the keys to my bimmer? Wetting up the sheets, I got you sweating. In for a pound, in for a penny. I just want my Lizzie, separate my spaghetti. Your body language tell me that you mean business. One track, work it out, we doing fitness. I want it all day, Monday to Sunday. You got my heart racing, baby, when you come round, I make it bounce.
Make it bounce, yeah, yeah. Make it bounce, make it bounce, yeah, yeah.
Bounce, make it bounce, make it bounce, make it bounce. Oh, more you know, go pay for me, leg. Big daddy ballers, they don't play. Money no be get it. I must say, chauffeur, give it to me fast. No delay, I just wanna vibe. Mix life blender. Say you wanna take body, can not slender. Love me, jelly, love me tender. Then I go bend for you, oh surrender. Your body language tell me that you mean business. One track, work it out, we doing fitness. I want it all day.
Ashley, conference the call.
With who?
Chastity,
Hey,
long time of cities.
this not sound safe. Want me know?
Let me tell you now a little story. Me have a man, why have a woman when don't know about me. Boy, me know a she, but she don't know me. The body make me happy, do me not own it. This is the original side chick song. Me open up my feelings for your next gal, man. Me know it wrong, but it never plan. Normally me a wife, me no whole side bitch position. This is not my style and I saw me tan. Me open up my feelings for your next gal, man. Me know it wrong, but it never plan. Normally me a wife. Me no like phone, and if you like me no forgive. Some I feel a little better if I me him cheat with. When you are the wife, you don't know who else in my frig. Oh, when you're on the side of you, we matter everything. Him rate me highly, spoil me, treat me like a wifey. I be respect, non-text when him beside me. The only thing I say we lucky and we private. And if me see them pan the gram, me have to abide it. Plus him know me now go confront no girl. Not the type of search and contact no girl. If me see them together, me in my feelings, but still me not leave him. This is the original side chick song. Me open up my feelings for your next gal, man. Me know it wrong, but it never plan. Normally me a wife, me no whole side bitch position. This is not my style and I saw me tan. Me open up my feelings for your next gal, man. Me know it wrong, but it never plan. Normally me a wife. A man is always gonna cheat, I benefit him. Give me anything I want, so me nah go stress him. Prefer know who him a fuck than be the victim. Cause if me find out from a stranger, me I go left him. And unlike me, no know my worth. Me well alert, me can get hurt. We ever a flirt. It make me happy, so me I go make it work. Me comfortable, even though me on a first. Was special occasions I heard, yeah. Me get for saying day after the birthday. If me see them together, me in my feelings, but still me not leave him. The original side chick song. Be open up my feelings for your next gal, man.
Welcome back, everybody. I just want to touch on a real quick note. Yes, Caroline, you're absolutely right. Rape is a real big problem, and rape is probably one of the biggest problems with someone who is a sex addict. So thank you so much for putting that in the text. Also, thank you so much for tuning in. I think this is the first time I've ever seen your name. So thank you so much for joining the show. Thank you to everybody for joining the show. Everybody who's on board, you know, rocking with you, boy. Thank you. I really appreciate it. I also have to give a shout out to somebody who reached out to me regarding the regarding my audio from last show. There was a slight snafu in my audio, but I definitely thank you so much for pointing that out to me, bringing it to my attention. I won't name no names because, you know, not everybody wants to know that they're watching the threesome show. I don't know why. I mean, it's a safe space. You know, everybody on here is, you know, on here for the purpose of learning, or some of them are on here because they're sex addicts and they just want to hear about fucking sex all day. Who knows? So I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna do something on my show that I normally do not do, and I'm gonna talk about relationships and love addiction. I'm gonna talk about relationships and love, period, because I mean that's something I don't normally do on this show. But in the midst of my research for today's show, I found that there is a correlation between relationship and love addiction and sexual addiction. There are a lot of similarities. So what is relationship or love addiction? That's basically someone who makes relationships and love their main focal point. They become so fixated on it that it will interrupt their normal activities throughout the day, the same as the same as a sex addict. Someone who has a relationship or love addiction, they're gonna exhibit the same type of behaviors as someone who has a sex addiction, except their main focal point is not sex. It's the feeling of being loved or loving someone. And I never thought that this was an issue. I never knew that this was an actual behavior disorder, but it is. And it's one that plagues more people than sex addiction. A love addict will be characterized strictly by love and romance. They have fantasies all day of loving someone or being loved by someone. Where a normal person may daydream about, oh, you know, one day I'm going to be rich and I'm going to buy this, or they may daydream about their current mate. Someone who has a love or relationship addiction will daydream all day about being in love or being loved by someone. They're not looking for a particular type of person. They're just looking for someone to fit the bill, who's willing to love on them, or that someone that will allow them to be loved on. This was crazy. And anybody who watches my show, anybody who tunes in, knows I actually steer away from the whole love aspect of things. That's not what my show is typically for. You know, I'm not. That's not my focal point. That's not what I try to steer everybody towards. I mean, don't get me wrong. Love and you know, being in a relationship is good, and it's needed. But that's not what my goal of my show typically is. There's other shows for that. It's just not this one. But when I found that there was a a parallel between someone who has a sex addiction and someone who has a love addiction, I was like, you know what? I need to bring this on. I need to bring this in. Love addiction can affect both the body and the brain. Relationship addiction or love addiction is a true behavioral or process disorder. Love addiction or relationship addiction, it triggers a reward system in your brain. Here's the word I was looking for earlier. Neurotransmitters. It forces your neurotransmitters to release certain endorphins in your body. And it stimulates you to a sense of being high. So if you've ever met somebody, or if this is you, and in the midst of, the first or second date, they're already talking about the fact that, either they might be falling in love with you, or they're already making plans for the future, and you pretty much on the second date, you haven't even planned on having sex with this person yet, and they're already planning on being in love with you or being in this full-blown relationship, excuse me. That's someone who might have a love or relationship addiction. Not only does, so once it sends those, once the neurotransmitters go off, sends endorphins into your bloodstream, it creates a heightened sense of awareness for the person that you're talking to or the person that you're dealing with. And it makes you believe that you're in love with them, even though you're not really. I used to always think that was just a sense of lust. I used to always think that was just your lustful behaviors taking over. Because for me, I've in the past, way in the past, I've actually had situations where I was so drawn to somebody that I thought it was love, but then once we had sex, that draw was no longer there, and I found and discovered that was just basically lust. It was the lust that was taking over me and making me think that I was that into them, and I really wasn't. I just really wanted to just have sex with them. But someone who's addicted to relationships like that or love like that, they become obsessed with it. So if you meet somebody and you might have one date with them, or not even a date, just a conversation that's where you all seem like you may be connecting, and they start sending you flowers, they start calling you, they can't stop fascinating over you. It's not so much the you in the situation, it's just the fact that they're addicted to being in relationships. They're addicted to being in love, and they're just finding their next victim to be in a relationship or be in love with. If you tuned into one of my previous shows, I actually spoke about a female who I dealt with. Yes, a fatal attraction. Absolutely. A definite fatal attraction. So on a previous show, I talked about where I met a female at a club in my earlier years, because I don't even club like that no more. But in my earlier years, I met a female at the club, went home with her first night I met her. We jumped into bed or whatever, we did what we did. And the next morning she asked me, she was like, so do you love me? She more than likely has a relationship or love addiction. I didn't know this chick for a full 24 hours and she was talking about, do you love me? Of course, I got the hell up out of there. Real quick. Someone who has a relationship or love addiction, they also engage in risky behavior. Their risky behavior will more so lean towards having unprotected sex, because they already feel like they're connected to a person more than they really are. What I mean by that is, you meet somebody, and let's say, first date, for guys, you be a gentleman, you're not pushing the whole sex issue. But by the second date, she feels like she's so connected to you. She's looking at that first date as being the first year that y'all been together. And when she does that, she now feels like everyone doesn't deserve the baby arm. Cannon, what's good, yo? Yo, I can't recover from that one. But those who don't know what he's talking about, the baby arm, for guys, that's your third leg. That's what he's talking about, the baby arm. You're damn right. Not everybody deserves that shit, and that shit can get you into trouble. But yeah, like it's that person who takes that first interaction, that first date, and they stretch it in their mind to believe it's like you all have been together forever. You are my soulmate. You're my everything. And when you finally do get into bed with them, they're actually pushing for unprotected sex. And because for them, that skin to skin connectivity just furthers that bond that they have built in their mind. So someone who has a relationship addiction or a love addiction may be prone to sexually transmitted diseases. Similar to somebody who has a sex addiction, they may engage in unprotected sex as a risky activity, but they're doing it for a different reason. Someone who has a sex addiction is doing it for basically the purposes or reasons of they don't have time to stop and grab contraception or grab a condom. If for them, they feel like if they break the mood, you may walk away from the situation. So they don't have the time to stop and say, hey, let me put a condom on because I want to make sure that we're both protected, because they don't want to break the mood. Someone who has a love or relationship addiction is doing it because it creates the connection for them. It furthers that connection. Whew, this one is deep. Like I'm baffled that this even exists. I may take it a step further to say this may control more women than men, but there are men out there who will become so connected off of the simplest of interactions that they'll think, oh my God, I love her, she loves me, she's my end all be all, we should get married. And they'll also engage in activities that will separate them from what the normal person may think is the importance of life. What I mean by that is they'll quit their job just to make sure that they can be there for that person's beck and call all the time. They may distance themselves from friendships to make their relationship so important. Relationship and love addiction can really disrupt your life in such a major way that you're actually sitting there thinking, I can live off of just being with this person. I don't have to worry about friendships. Family becomes a distant thought because this person becomes the most important person, period. Calm down and slow down, Tonto, because the person that you're chasing in that way may not even be looking at you in that same sense. And what that'll do is that will cause someone to go into a spiral of depression because they've already built up in their mind that you are the end all be all to who they need to be with. And when you set them straight, when you clear it up for them, let me tell you right now, if you find someone that has a relationship or love addiction, let them down very, very slowly. Because if you abruptly cut them off, that may cause thoughts of suicide in them. And I don't think there's a person who's listening to the sound of my voice right now who wants to think that I cut somebody off and it caused them to kill themselves. So be cognizant of who you get into a relationship with. If you start to see these red flags, start to back away from them slowly. Don't just ghost them or stop calling them. Stop talking to them. Stop accepting their phone calls, because you may put them in such a bout of depression that they cannot get out of. And they may take their lives or become homicidal and try to take your life. So really, really, really take heed to this. And I know I'm getting a lot deeper than I would normally get on my show. But because, suicidal thoughts and actions and homicidal thoughts and actions came up in my research, I thought that this is something that I really need to kind of slow down and really focus on. For those who are tuning into my show for the first time, I'm normally not this serious. I'm really a laugh a damn minute, and I really cut up. I believe females have fatal attraction in friendships also. Thank you so much, Amanda, for pointing it out. However, it ain't this show. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. She's 100% correct. You may have that same, someone who has a relationship or love addiction may treat some friendships that way, where they become so connected to a friend because that friend is creating that stimulant for them. They don't need to have sex. They just need somebody that they can connect to, and they connect to them so much and so deeply that losing that friendship can also have that fatal outcome. So watch your interactions, watch the people that you deal with, watch what you normally do. Next week, I'm going to go back to cutting up and acting a damn fool. Our community suffers from emotional intelligence. Absolutely. For those who don't know what emotional intelligence is, basically understanding what your emotions are. Emotional intelligence is something that our children struggle with in a major way. They don't understand how to deal with their emotions because they don't know what their emotions are. A person who has a relationship or love addiction has no control over what their emotions are. Their emotional intelligence is thrown totally out of whack. So thank you so much for pointing it out, Sir Cannon. I really appreciate you. I'm really drawing this out, not so much for the sake of time, but more so for the sake of helping the people understand that not everybody that you deal with, to you it may just be a simple interaction. Hey, you want to go out to dinner, you want to go hang out, and they go to dinner with you, and for you it was a simple interaction. For them, it became their world. It became their life. And when it does that, when it becomes their world, you become their world. And if you take that from them, you may take their life from them. So really, really, really be careful with that. Most deaf. My homeboy just went through that, and she committed suicide last week. Wow. I'm sorry to hear that, Amanda. I'm really sorry to hear that. Some guys will get involved in someone. Yeah, I did open it up. I did open it up, and I went there. And although it may be somber and downing, it's a fact of life. It's a reality. Guys, when you are out there and you are sitting there trying to conquer women and you're thinking, oh my God, for me, it's just going to be sex. It may not just be sex for that person. It may be more than that. It may end up putting them to the point of what Amanda just said, and someone may take their life or take your life. I know a guy who basically knocked on his girl's window because she decided she no longer wanted to deal with him, and he shot through the window, injured her, and then took his own life. And that was all because for her, it was just a fly-by-night situation, but for him, it became his entire existence. So, that's that. All right, I'm at, 4 minutes till the end, and I normally shut down early. I do want to thank everyone for tuning in. Please come back next week. Bring a friend. If you're watching this right now, do me a really big favor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, so that every time I go live, every Tuesday at 8 p.m., you will be notified and you can tune in and you can see that I'm not always this serious. I normally just cut the fuck up and act a fool. We are iLegacy Media. That is the company that I work for. That is also the company that I own. If you have an idea for a show that you would like to become your brainchild, reach out to us at iLegacyMedia3@gmail.com. We have a great platform. We have some great engineers, and we take really big pride in doing what we do on a week-to-week basis. If you would like to advertise, if you have a company and you want to advertise on our platform, on our shows, reach out to us. Once again, that is iLegacyMedia3, if you can't read at the bottom of the screen, at gmail.com. Normally, these last 4 minutes, I say this every week, is meant for our advertisers. I need some people that's going to fill up these advertising slots, so I'm not sitting here rambling. We are iLegacy Media. We take, once again, like I said, we take great pride in what we do. Every single time we jump on the air, it's not something we do for fun. We actually like what we do, and we really, really enjoy putting information out there. Stay tuned. We got some great shows coming up soon. This week, you do not want to miss True Weight with Amanda Alston. It comes on Thursday at 8 p.m. She's going to have a truly mind-blowing show. You do not want to miss it. Next week, of course, you don't want to miss me on Tuesday. But also, we are finally putting Mr. Q Smooth's brainchild out there. It's called Quiet Storm with Mr. Q. You do not want to miss that show if you are a lover of music and the arts. Thanks, Stacy. I really appreciate that. I thought I was rambling. But if you are a lover of music and the arts, you do want to tune in to The Quiet Storm with Mr. Q. He's going to be talking about everything from poetry to music, and I'm not just talking about hip hop and R&B. I'm talking a true lover of jazz music. Like, he is way, way, way ahead of his time. And you do not want to miss his show. His show comes on Wednesdays. I believe it's going to be 8 p.m. It's going to be showing up. I'll be popping into my group all week, and I'll be dropping his information in there. Everybody that I've reached out to today to tell them about my show, I'm going to be popping his information in there as well. We got another show that's coming up in the fall, which is going to be, two females explaining, that struggle going through your 30s. That's my time, though. That's an hour. That's it. I ain't got no more. That's it. I'm done. So, I will see you all next week, Tuesday, 8 p.m. Tune in. Once again, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let me know that you enjoyed the show. I love you all. But on that note, remember, I tried to told you. Be easy.
Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up.